Hello, everyone. We'll be starting our next session, and I would like to welcome Dr. Raja Narayanan and Dr. Mehul Mehta on stage to moderate this clinical research session.
Mehul, can you come on stage, please? Yeah. Can we have the video, please? So, good morning once again. It's my pleasure to moderate this session on impactful clinical trials and increasing research efficiency, along with Dr. Mehul Mehta, who will be co-moderator. We have an esteemed panel here today, and we will be discussing about what is the meaning of an impactful clinical research. We may choose, different questions, outcomes, but what is the process that has to be followed to make sure that it has the highest impact? Whatever research process or question that we have, many times we just have a, let's say you had a discussion over tea or coffee with someone you were, interested in some topic, and you had some thoughts. Does it automatically be thought as the best question that you have to be answered, or is there a process to evaluate that question itself? So actually I say the maximum time for any research has to be done before doing the research. Actually, it has to tax your brain, not after you start doing the research and you start worrying about patient dropouts. That should not be the time that you should be spending for impactful research. And what is efficient research? That's another question that our panelists will be answering by way of improving clinical trial design. So we have an esteemed panel, and first I would like to invite Dr. Aparna Mukherjee. I would like to invite her to come onto the stage. She is a very senior scientist at the ICMR. So she is in charge of the clinical studies and trials unit, epidemiology and communicable diseases division. She is a pediatrician by training at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. She is a program officer for various clinical trials and also heads the multidisciplinary research units. And she's supervising many such units. And she has a vast experience in evaluating and probably making a decision whether a trial should be funded or not. So if you want to ask the right questions, and make sure you know her questions and what answers she want. So it will be probably it will increase your probability of getting funded. So there's no artificial intelligence in this. Uh, and, we also have another esteemed panelist, Dr. Nivedita Devasenapati. I request her to come on to the stage. She's from the George Institute for Global Health. And you wouldn't have seen that we have many people from the George Institute. They are a key collaborator here with LV Prasada Institute and IHOPE. And she's passionate about research methods, and that's what actually the title actually implies. How can we improve research methodology? And she was key in bringing out this topic and giving this title, and it's very important for the audience here. so that we have fewer failures in research work that we do. So she's trained in clinical research and applied statistics, and also she works with various spectrum of diseases. So it includes cardiovascular, maternal health, musculoskeletal health, and she's also a recipient of the India Alliance Fellowship Program. So welcome, Dr. Nivedita. Um, the next panelist I would like to welcome is Dr. Pungotai Subramani. She's a leading she's a leading clinical trial expert, in the sense, if you see the number of trials she has done, and it's mind boggling. And the kind of experience she has over many years. And if you probably want to learn from the success as well as from the failure, I think she can tell us a lot. And from her experience, she'll be able to tell how to improve clinical trial efficiencies. And she works for the Madras Diabetes Research Foundation. And it says here in her record she has done more than 150 clinical trials. It's like, Virat Kohli or Sachin Tendulkar kind of centuries here. And we are really keen to have her actual on ground experience to guide us. We have another panelist, Dr. Mohammad Abdul Salam. I request you to come over to the stage, please. So no prize for, you can sit over there, yeah, please. Thank you. So no prizes for guessing. He's also from the George Institute. He is a senior research fellow there at the George Institute, and he is a joint lecturer in the Faculty of Medicine at the University of New South Wales. And he is involved in developing and conducting a lot of RCTs. So you can see the panel all aligned to the theme that we have. And we also, he's also specializing in cardiovascular research. And again, we'll be giving you all an opportunity to ask some probably tough questions to them. And while we moderate along with Mehul, but Mehul is here not just as a co-moderator, actually. He should have been sitting here, but we involved him so that he can also ask the right questions, right? So panelists don't get to ask questions, but sometimes it's important to ask the right questions, and that's why Mehul is a co-moderator here. So Mehul, would you like to give any introductory thoughts?
No, I just want to start because there's so much to learn now from what's happening.
Okay, good. So the first thing is Dr. Nivedita has a Menti survey. So if you would like to run that survey.
So thank you, Dr. Raja, for the introductions. If you can see in the corner of the, there is a barcode, but probably it won't be possible from your mobile phones. Go to menti.com. You can Google menti.com and then add in the number, which is 72474, which is written here. And whoever are able to log in can give me a thumbs up. I can see around 6 people. Yeah, it's increasing. Okay. I'll wait till it's ready. So the purpose here is we want to hear from you who you are and what challenges you're facing. And with that context, we'll start our session. And we would also like to hear at the end what you think about impact and efficiency. So that's how we'll end the survey. And as you're entering your responses, you'll be able to see the responses on the screen. So hopefully you all could go to menti.com and then you could enter the code and you'll be seeing this page. The number is 7274 5588. Seven two seven four 5588. Okay, so you can see the poll number in the next slide also. So yeah, it's best for the panelists to know the audience. So can you choose as many roles to play? It need not be just one. Okay, interesting. I seem to have got the categories. No, because we have the others category as the maximum. I'm really sorry. That just shows my question was not right. But wonderful to see we have physicians, clinical researchers, and economists.
That's the most important group.
Yeah, public health specialists, social researchers, civil representative, wonderful, and patient advocates, and lot many others which I don't know who you are. So, thank you very much for your response. Now, I would like even the panelists to join in this because I would like to know. So the Menti code is here on the top. What word comes to your mind when you think of a clinical trial? It's about the emotion. It could be about what you think about it. So do enter one word, but you can enter up to 3 words. So one word at a time, and you will see the words coming in on the screen. So it's like more data, the more rich it is. So Dr. Mehul, is this an AI doing this? Okay. Yeah, you can see lot many. I got alarmed when the risk came in first, but probably that's there looming behind, and wonderful to see that the patients are behind. So you can't leave them behind at every aspect of the trial. So wonderful. Thank you so much for the responses. And I'm going to go to the next slide. I'm happy to share this with the IHOPE the results so that if they have your email addresses, they can share it with you as well. So the next aspect is about for the previous 2 slides, you didn't need to be a trialist to complete this. For this particular side, many of you might be involved in some way in a trial, right? You don't need to be thinking of the research question, but some way in a trial. Your organization, in what way does it support in these aspects? As Dr. Mehul said towards the end, you need infrastructure, you need administrative support, capacities in research methods, some amount of intramural funding, human resources to run the unit, and statistical support. So answer these when, if you feel that you are somewhat satisfied or very much satisfied with the services you have with your organization or your institute. So it will be wonderful to know where, it will be good to know from the audience. So I'm quite intrigued because I was just thinking statistical support will come quite low. That's very interesting. Okay, so this is good response. Now we all know that large multi-center collaborative trials are the ones which have higher impact, right? So doing large multi-center collaborative trials are a challenge of its own. So keeping that in mind, even if you have not done, what do you think could be the challenges you might have to do a multi-center collaborative trials in India, even if you have not participated, if you were to do one? So the one on the top is funding. Funding is something which is a big challenge. And participant retention is the other one. So I just want to, sorry, Dr. Pungode, to put you on spot. She's called the retention queen. So you have any retention problems, please don't ask her because that seemed to be a big problem. Okay, so this poll will be alive, but thank you very much for participating. Wonderful interaction. So we'll come back to this poll after the panel discussion. So hold on to this and thank you so much for participating. So with this background, we are ready to answer your questions.
Mehul, would you like to start off with the?
Yes, I think since you raised the question right up front, efficiency of trial, and I think the COVID experience taught us that the way we thought of trials is what the world needed, the widely separated, and we have to reinvent it. So now we seem to have gone back. So what are the lessons we can learn from the COVID experience? And the fact that they cost so long, and they all add to the burden of cost of drugs, especially when you look at multi-country, multi-centric trials being their part of. What do we need to do to make trials more efficient, more relevant, more applicable? And I would finally say, when the real human evidence of using the drug needs to be congruent with the trial results are. You're seeing that also now separates out because the trial conditions and the real world conditions are quite different. So how do we bridge all that to make our trial structures much more relevant and
Thank you, Dr. May, for this question. It's a long summary, so I think I can only just give a few on few points. If you think logically, the first thing would be, are we asking the right question? So for COVID, asking the right question was not a problem. It was simple. How can we prevent? How can we save lives? How can we prevent disability? It was pretty simple. The questions were not a problem. But the thing was, how do we get the study moving? And that is where the role of ethics and regulatory bodies came into play, and quick changes were done in the system. India is the best example where we could roll out many trials, and Dr. Aparna was the face of it. So I would not deal that aspect. The aspect about study design, asking the right question, doing the right design is again very important for efficiency. Typically, when we see about trials, they have a fixed protocol, fixed sample size, fixed randomization method, and fixed outcomes. And also the way people are treated, everything is standard. So it's a big gamble which the researcher has to take in once this protocol is approved. There's no way they can change it, and a change would mean either lack of credibility or a long process to start all over again. So this was recognized well before, but it was always seen with a pinch of salt, skepticism, and there was a concern for the researcher, do I need to go to that, the word adaptive? So the word adaptive was seen with a sense of fear. It was COVID which made it a common word, and they could see the benefit of being more agile and flexible. So when we say about adaptive designs, it's about what is the difference between adaptive and a post hoc decision. So we also need to remember that why do we keep trials at a very top level? Because of its credibility, as some of you wrote in the word cloud. The credibility comes in because you don't change at your whims and fancies. So the main difference between an adaptive design and a ad hoc post hoc decision is what you want to change and how you would want to change, and the processes for change are well documented beforehand. So you say that, well, this is my sample size based on this assumption, but I might change it later. This is the proportion by which I want to allocate to this group, but I might change it later based on prior examples. So adaptive design is one thing which can increase efficiency, but I would also add a caveat here that you need to have infrastructure for doing adaptive designs. Infrastructure in terms of data management, because it is data which is going to inform your next decision. If you don't have that infrastructure to manage data, to analyze data, and to immediately inform the decision, it's like you have the data and you make the decision in your boardroom. So that is the speed with which we need to have, which not every place will have. So while adaptive design is attractive, it can be done if we have the infrastructure. Again, it has other criteria. We can do it only for some diseases where the outcome is faster, etc. So I would not go deeper into it. So efficiency, asking the right question, and doing the right design. One last aspect which I would like to touch upon is about we want more data, right? Efficiency is about how much information are we getting for a given money or a given time, and efficiency can come due to poor processes, and efficiency can come because you're collecting loads of data for a small amount of time which you're doing. But this is a double-edged sword. If you collect lots of data, then your cost will increase and your quality might reduce. So that's one thing. So one way to increase efficiency is to connect your data points, which you need for trial, with the electronic health records. So efficiency can be extremely easy. Why do UK and NHS can do a lot many trials, and US because they have excellent electronic health records. So health systems having good electronic health records is something which is very much fundamental for efficiency, and it's very much I'm in favor of what was discussed in the morning, and that is otherwise if you don't have that system, then you have to collect very less data to be efficient. Otherwise your credibility and quality is going to reduce. So with this I'll stop, and probably I can cover more.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Actually, you brought in the concept of adaptive trial design. I think we have a workshop for them to understand what it is, but it makes the process efficient, gives you some flexibility within some rules or boundaries. And also you brought in EHR and to improve the efficiency, the electronic medical record. The next question is to Dr. Aparna, and I might have guessed what kind of question it will be for her. Probably related to funding, right? So, many times when we apply for any grant proposal, you realize that, okay, you want to do more, but there is a limit up to which you will be funded, and sometimes you feel that this amount of funding is too less for me to do this research. While it's difficult to put a number, and it's always a battle between budget and what you would like to do. I've been told that research funding in India is very less. I'm not sure what the exact numbers are. Where probably it's 0.02% of GDP is right here. But you saw the poll here just now, right? Funding as one of the top. By the way, LV Prasad Institute closed back 12% of its budget into it. That's a huge amount of investment that we have into budget. But Dr. Aparna, what do you think the ICMR is looking? Is it looking to improve the funding as well as, let's say, relating it to the efficiency of the trial itself? While you may say that, okay, why don't you bring it down? Do you also give suggestions, how you can improve the efficiency so that the cost of the trial also comes down? And it's related to training aspect also. So what steps is ICMR taking to, in general, train the researchers in?
Thank you. That's a very good question. And yes, research funding is always limited. However large pot we have, but then we also have a huge group of researchers who we have to fund. So, but we have been going through, we do go through as to how much impactful these fundings are. So currently, as you said, as you rightly pointed out, there are some projects which may not, we had a cap for all projects. So now we have kind of divided our funding into some which can be done with less money, some which would require more money, and some maybe more than that. So if you do apply to the ICMR grants, you would realize that this time we have divided it into small grants, intermediate grants, and some larger for advanced research where the amount of money has been changed so that you can have larger projects. So that's the first thing. And secondly, like our previous panelists said, to have a good, impactful research, it's like you have to have good input. If you have garbage in, garbage out kind of a thing. So first of all, what we look at is the prioritize what kind of question it is, and and what are the deliverables. Publication is correct. We all as scientists, we would say publish or perish, and that is okay. But publication cannot be the only deliverable. There has to be some other impact on either the policy change or a practice change. It may not be a groundbreaking or a huge impact, or these changes always come in increments, but that increment should be thought of as to how will your research impact the patient management ultimately, in whatever small way it does. So that is what we are looking into when we are actually reviewing the the proposals. And as you said, regarding methodology and regarding the actual expertise in doing these trials, yes, we do have these continuous courses and webinars and workshops, but we all know that we retain very less out of these workshops. You retain a few days of whatever you have been taught and then you forget. Unless you do it, you don't retain it. So what we are trying to develop in this model is trying to have a kind of a hand-holding or a kind of a guidance program where the granting bodies, that is the funders, are more involved in terms of protocol. If you require help in protocol development, in your data management, that part we think we are ready to help you out with that. And as you're talking about the budgetary changes that are suggested and to make it more efficient, usually we do try to actually give you the ways that you can change your budget. And sometimes we do also suggest that you cannot do this in so little of budget. This is also, at least in the tenure that I have been working with, we have suggested, because people do have this tendency to think that if I put in a less budget, it's more likely that the project is going to be funded. But then if you actually, the thing is that you have to have an optimal budget. If you don't know what amount of money is going to go into your research, actually you haven't thought through it. And you shouldn't ask for more, because we are not bargaining vegetables that I ask for this much and I cut down 10%. Neither should you ask for less, because then we know that you don't know how to do it. So that is a balance that we look for.
So that's one answer is right. You go and you get something. So yeah, but thank you so much.
So I think one key here is trial efficiency, cost of trials. I would add another piece to it now we want to switch to relevancy. You've done so many trials and it's 150, you manage complex situations. Do you think that we need to look at trials in the context of risk adjusting it to what the trial purpose is and then finding out whether it's relevant? We had to risk adjust in COVID. We risk adjust for rare diseases. We don't have actually the same level of threshold. And seeing the big east-west divide or the north-south divide, I feel the goal in trials in the US is for the Western countries to find. So what do we do to not involve quality, not be scientific, but yet risk adjust? How do we look at it?
Thank you. And first of all, I would like to thank the whole, sir and you for a wonderful opportunity to be here to part of this wonderful conference. It's a great honor. It's a very good question. As you informed, we also had a very bad scenario during the COVID. At my personal experience, because we have n number of research unit here. We have one for translation, we have for genomics. Everything was shut down because we can't shut down our clinical trials because giving drugs to the patients, and it should be on timely and the schedule of visits to be conducted. So in that was a great challenge to me. And what we did is that there was not pharma coming out. They said they can do, but there was a lot of quarantine being done. We are not even able to supply the medications. So what we did is that I took an initiative. We had a home care and we called and informed them whether we can get the help. And my staff were willing and they went there and the samples collected and then investigation product being given. So this is one scenario where when you conduct the trials, this could happen, and especially for pharma studies. Like when you do an epidemiological studies or any observational studies, it can go ahead without any interruption. But this is a scenario where we have to think. So the conduct of the trial is very important, and in such a scenario, So after COVID, I think even before COVID, what happened is that they were thinking about the decentralization. I think this is going to come to be a model where we can't do decentralization for all the studies. Considering the future trials, as you said, we can't compromise on the ethics, we can't compromise on the science, and we can't also compromise the patient safety. It's all very important for the trial. So considering all this, a kind of a hybrid mode, can we have a patient who can come in, and where the situation where they can't come in, we can go there. But trials like oncology, we can't have all the time a kind of a decentralization. They have to come because there will be special tests where we can't take all this to be done. So considering all this, I think the future may go for a mode which could be a centralized and decentralization, where we can't compromise all the things which we are doing now. And when we do about, as you rightly said, the science, even when I do a pharma study, we focus, the ethics committee should think about the quality of the question, of the research question. It is not that you come out with something and try to push a product. It is not the science. It is only a marketing. So our ethics committee scrutinize things. They say, it doesn't have anything science in it. So try to bring some science. So whenever, as we are taking up a study, see that there's something science involved, you're bringing a good quality data, and also see that the quality data is assessed or monitored by the ethics committee. It's not been done in India, across India. There is no ethics committee monitoring your work. You do and you are doing, that's all. But we are reporting a safety advisory, let's say there is a portal. You know, this challenge, which I really want to, maybe I'm out of the question, but it is very important as a researcher or a clinical trialist, you think about it, the Sugam portal. The Sugam portal, you put all the SAE. What is that? Who is reviewing it? After 6 months data is gone, they are asking me, the study is over. What happened to the patient? The patient study completed. So it is not been it's not been monitored. The government monitors. But as an investigator, we have to look into these aspects. So future, if at all a US FDA funded study or a pharma study, or you're doing epidemiological studies, we have to think about a hybrid model where centralization and decentralization to be in place. And adding to that, I have a couple of slides where I can just show on retention, because these are few slides which you can take it as a take-home message. I think if you are doing a clinical trial or even for epidemiology. So if I have the previous slide, please, yeah. Yes. Yeah, sorry. This is what is the success of retention? I written a paper on retention. I think I shared it to group and also to Nilima. I think you can look at it. So it is not only the study sponsor who's funding the study or the investigator or the coordinators like us. It is the subjects. Okay, without study participant, we can't know who's going to be retained and what is the data. So keep that in nutshell. This is very important when you think about a retention. So I'm not taking much. Can we have the next one? I think it's not good. Yeah. So the screening our approach is what I've been doing it for many years. It's about going to be 3 decades I'm in this field. But the database, we have a huge database. We have about 5 lakh patient population. And also ongoing epidemiological studies are there. And what we approach is the networking. We have a networking, we have relatives, we have staff. So when we have a study, we inform them, there is a diabetic study, are you going to be part of this? And we just give a kind of not a big synopsis, just a small few points. This is thing you have to take it to the patients who is going to be part of the study. And the staff are really helpful. They inform the neighbors, friends. And reference from the participants of all many years of my experience, what I found when I did all this I've been doing I'm not like an artificial intelligence, it's an intelligence which has been inbuilt to our department. So I did the database not going to work, the ongoing base, because the retention was falling down. As Sir said, I completed 160 trials, of which 155 have 100% retention. 155, that is 100%. So globally, they call me a retention queen, but I don't want to say it's not. I'm not so proud about it, but humble to have that name. So they say, "Come, how are you doing? How was it done in India? How was it done in Japan?" So they put me in charge of South Asian countries, especially Japan and China, and they have different norms. It's not like India, because people here in India are very sentimental, emotional. When we talk to them, we are part of them, they see, yeah, someone is taking care, but it's not happening in Japan and other countries. So I felt the difference too. So it's a long story, so I don't want to talk about this now. So what happened is that reference from the participants gave me 100% success. So the rapport how you build is very important. For retention, is not like you take the patient, put them in study and go. Inform them every visit. They are IIT. We treat them. We escort. There are two coordinators who go behind the patient. They say you are escorted all the time till they complete the study. I mean the visit. We are back. They will send them back. Oh, someone has to take it. That's what happened during COVID. Because the parents were staying alone, the children are in US and UK, and there was no one to take care. I give a call, how are you? Oh, I'm so happy that here someone is taking care of me. That is how, see, it is not, that is a patient care. So you get money, you get funding, you get everything, but without patients, you may not get data, and you have to be also look into the welfare. That's very important. So that is the main move for any retention. And part of the patients who are in the current study, were in the previous study, also helped us to get studies, and it's still ongoing process. And that is how we are able to have 100% retention. Can I have the next one? This is some of the, because I'm from a clinical trials from Dr. Morgan's Diabetic Center, you can see how the retention rate across. Earlier it was not like, it was 75%. So what is the hypothesis you are going to answer? It's not been answered at all. You have a research question, you can't stop it because you don't have efficient data and you are going for intention to read, you're not going to answer the question. So what they did, I think it's one of the big companies must be knowing, no one else. So they brought in called a national study coordinator. So what they do is that their main role is to coordinate the in across the national level. So they all meet together and now see how the increases. You can see 99% across all the studies that has gone, and one of the studies got 100% retention. That is the use of a national study coordinator. So my role is also one of the national study coordinators for a couple of the studies. And another study is a mental health study, is called Independent, which is from NIH granted study. There also we had an issue because giving a kind of a suicidal thought patients who come in, how to retain them, that also we had about 96%. So this is how you building the rapport with the patient makes a big difference. Next one, sorry. Can I have the next one, please? Yeah, and these are some of the activities. I think it's a take-home message. We conduct patient retention camp. So what we do is that we don't take them just like that. You are in a trial, you sign the informed consent, you take an AV consulting, that's all. No. We talk to them. This is what the progress of the study. You are in this level, your HbA1c has not come. Make it a kind of a thing. It's a kind of a get together with the patients and their relatives. It is not only the patient is coming. We invite even the attenders who come in. So they are taught what is this, the research and where they are. So we involve them in some kind of activities like physical activities. And can I have the next one, please? Yeah, this is, you can see Dr. Mohan is the investigator here. We give mementos. What is a memento? Not only for the speakers here, the panelists here. The memento talks a lot, you know. When we give a memento, they feel, oh, I'm recognized. I'm getting it from the PA like Dr. Morgan. They feel I'm getting a kind of a Nobel Prize. So they feel, oh, I have to get the next one. This is what happened. It became very competitive, and we conduct this retention camp. So my take-home message for you is that be very interactive with the patients and the relatives, and informed relatives are very important. If the patient's relatives are not informed, they say, why you take this study, stop it. So just involving them, and every year get together with the PI, a kind of a PI where Dr. Mohan is too busy, they don't even have time to talk. So this is how the success for the retention. So I thought it's very important when I'm out of some of the questions, but anyway, I thought it's very important first.
That's a point.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Dr. Pungar. Actually, what you brought out is such an important thing, not just for research and trials, it's for any healthcare provider in whatever role they are. The patient is in the center. That's what the main message was. And I think Aparna would be very happy to have seen what was shown there.
I am always a demanding person, right? So my question comes back to the first. When you're saying what is the right question, are you taking it patient input for determining the right questions? Because studies after studies are now showing that what bothers patients is different from what clinicians think bothers patients. So I think, as I said, I'm demanding, I'll want to see the next step where patients are being asked the questions as well.
Would any panelists like to take this question?
So one thing which the patient has the biggest role in a trial design, they may not know the pharmacology, or they may not know the prognosis of a disease or the mechanism of how a drug would act. What they would know is what is it they want out of the disease. So it's about what is their choice of outcome is something which is important. One practical problem as researchers, what we have is, so outcomes are divided into clinical efficacy and or effectiveness, patient-reported outcome measures, safety outcomes, and the economic outcomes. While all these are important for everybody, patient-reported outcome is something which is extremely important. But in research, every tool we use needs to be validated. And for validation, validation means not validated in a context which is something else. So as researchers, as we have gathered here, we need to ensure that we are using validated tools, but we are responsible for validating and developing the tools. So that is one place where patients can contribute. And every tool, so when I say patient-reported outcomes, it means the list of symptoms which is bothering them, has it reduced over the period? So there are many cardiovascular trials where cardiologists don't ask, they're interested if the stent has worked or if the myocardial injury is reduced or if but there are so many other patient-reported outcomes which needs to be measured. So clinicians need to be aware that patient-reported outcomes should be part of any trial. And I think Salam will be able to tell how patient-reported outcomes will help in actually informing evidence. So, and this is one point I said, I wanted to say how patients can be involved.
Can I add one more point to yours? Sorry, can you have just?
Yeah, sure. And then we'll have.
That should be patient-centric protocols. As rightly said, we are not having patient-centric approach. Is it doable where the number of visits are reduced, whether we can have more telephone calls? So it is not flexible. So it's not a rigid model which we have to change. You don't accept a protocol unless it is user-friendly to the patients to come to the visits. So that is very important. So I specify it should be a protocol-centric to the patients.
Very nice. So we'll have more questions from the
No
audience, but
problem.
we have.
Yeah,
So
please,
I'll just
please.
add to what Nivedita said. Yes, it is very important to co-design, co-conduct, and co-disseminate what we do. And some of the work that we are doing, especially in low and middle income countries, in Nigeria and Sri Lanka, that involves a lot of formative work, as you were saying, that you need to think a lot before you actually do something, right? So we are engaging communities at the stage of developing the research question itself. So they are part of the team that is thinking of what should be the right question, whether the methods that we are planning are feasible to implement in this context, and what are the outcomes that patients are interested in. So that improves efficiency, that improves impact of the trial, and also it makes trials, you will have high retention, and such trials will be cost effective eventually.
So I have one more question.
Sure.
So since we were talking about impact, I mean, this question and ours on research to policy, what we would like to hear from you is, we understand that our one RCT is not the complete picture of an evidence, right? So we can't say we did one RCT, so this should be now implemented. But it has to be a basket or a different kind of analysis. And systematic reviews are one way to look at the overall evidence. So what one trial shows may not be replicated in another, or may be slightly different. And in India, I see that there is a dearth of people who do systematic reviews. At least I can count within ophthalmology. I've been trying to scout for people, and I can count in one hand probably. And the problem is, at least from the clinician's perspective, or even otherwise for policymakers, there's a problem of first out of the trial. So if you have a person looking at, let's say even our own students we have, we ask, did you read about this particular disease? They may raise their hands. Someone may have read one article and make their entire thoughts and impression based on that one article. They may not even have read that article, just the conclusion of the abstract, the author's conclusion becomes your conclusion, right? So that's not what we want for policy, right? So in terms of systematic review, so that was the first out of the drawer kind of problem. So in terms of systematic review, policy makers also need to have a methodology. And in terms of systematic reviews, what do you think can we do in India to improve that?
Yeah, I think for those of you who are less familiar with systematic reviews, it's a very important evidence synthesis tool. And it is considered as a tool that produces highest quality of evidence. And if you look at the hierarchy of evidence pyramid, they sit at the top. Especially systematic reviews of randomized clinical trials are considered as tools to produce highest quality evidence. And as you said, they are very important tools for guideline writing committees, for policymakers, for healthcare professionals, and for researchers to inform their decisions. So it's the backbone of evidence-informed decision making. We have been working in this space. So half of my time is spent on evidence synthesis, mainly systematic reviews in the cardiovascular space. We have just finished collecting data from 1,600 trials done globally on the effects of antihypertensive drugs. And we have collected data on 102 variables, I suppose, biochemical parameters, blood pressure, heart rate, so on and so forth. So compared to primary research, secondary research is considered easy to conduct and low cost because it's mostly desk work, right? You are synthesizing what is previously published. But the thing that we lack in India is, as you said, the skills and the capacity to do that work. So we see a lot of systematic reviews are being produced in India now. But if you look back like 3-4 years ago, most were published in high-income countries. China is doing really well in that space. So I would say capacity building is something that we need in India for doing systematic reviews. And as I agree, everyone will agree with me that we need Indian data for Indian problems. In terms of how, what it would mean in terms of impactful trials for evidence synthesis for doing systematic reviews. So I think the short answer there is you have to do good trials and you have to do good reporting. That's very important. Otherwise, you may have done a large trial, but it may not inform evidence because one of the key steps in doing systematic reviews is grading the quality of evidence. You assess the risk of bias in the studies that you are including in the systematic review. If your study is not of high methodological quality, then it will be excluded in the sensitivity analysis that we call, and it will not actually contribute to the evidence and then therefore to the decisions that all these policymakers and healthcare professionals make. Yeah, so I think capacity building is something that can be done very easily, I would say.
If I can join in.
Yeah,
We understand that, yes, when we talk of that pyramid, the highest one is systematic reviews. And at our organization, we now have a full wing which is being named as Center for Evidence Synthesis, where we have scientists whose full-time job is this. So we have dedicated team of scientists to actually look into this pattern of synthesizing evidence. Of course, they can't do it alone. We will have the whole researchers across the country as we do everything, calls and EOIs. But then we are giving it enough importance that the evidence generation is one pillar and evidence synthesis is another pillar, which also requires enough.
I have a comment on this because I think you raised a very important point. Systematic reviews of existing randomized double-blind trials. So let me give a concrete example. Ivermectin.
Yes.
Ivermectin, journal paper published on 20 of these randomized double-blind trials. Now they are accepted randomized double-blind trials. If you look at that data, you would say, well, it's not bad. You should try Ivermectin. And yet the actual evidence in a real expected trial didn't work. So how do you reconcile this dichotomy unless you know the data is available, you see, did it have statistical significance? Did the trial structured correctly? We don't have that on. How do you reconcile? Otherwise, you end up giving the advice that is not in it. Patient harms.
Yeah, sure. So I think there are a lot of such situations where you have a systematic review that says that something is beneficial, but you have, on the other hand, a large trial that says that's not the case. So, I mean, if you look at it as a researcher, then you would look at what is the quality of evidence that randomized trial has generated, right? So, is it as big as pooling all the other trials that were presented in that systematic review? And oftentimes, one limitation of systematic reviews is that you might end up mixing apples with oranges. So you may have different patient population, interventions of slightly different nature or administered in a different way, and you may have different outcomes as well. And they will also suffer what is called as the chronology bias. So done at different time points, things would have changed over a period of time, both in terms of patients' health as well as the healthcare that they receive. So, I mean, there's always this tug of war between you have one large trial which says that this doesn't work, and you have a basket of trials. On an average, it suggests that it works. So, and you see this divide in terms of the recommendations that you see in guidelines. So, for example, in the area of hypertension care, you have US guidelines now recommending lower thresholds, or sorry, lower goals for lower blood pressure goals, whereas low and middle income countries are still saying like 140 or over 90 is the goal. So that tug of war is always there. It's all about how you evaluate the quality of evidence and make decisions based on that. I hope that answers your question.
I just think that we should think of what we lived through in COVID.
Yeah.
And how much we had to struggle when patients' lives were at risk. That's when the struggle, the time period for the struggle, you can't afford to lose it. I'm just raising it because this is the world we live in.
I mean, these are all hard questions. We don't have clear answers, but I think they need to be thought through.
So I call RCT the red carpet trial.
They are red carpet.
But now Bangladesh thought that you can lay out the red carpet for everyone every time. As long as it's patient centric. What red carpet means, the patient is at the center.
Yes.
There is no dichotomy there. But as long as we can do that. Now we have questions from the audience.
Dr. Ramesh, in line with what we were discussing, like when we do a meta-analysis of this data, right? There are many approaches. In the older times, we are mostly doing the forest plot and then looking at the homogeneity and things to come out with the problem that you like to state. There are samples that are larger, some studies are there, and look at the one thing the student looks at is where is that the rhombus or the thing falls, right or left, and make a decision. And then the diamond, okay, I call the rhombus, okay. So, but I was reading a recent work wherein they were looking at how they can statistically adjust for this bias of large data and this and adjusting that. Do you think these kind of manipulations in meta-analysis are going to help us, or is it again adding another bias to the again quicker decisions that we are trying to make on the evidence that is there?
Can you please explain what you mean by adjustments?
What they did was see when they looked at homogeneity, looked at sample size, and we have these scores that the chi-squares are the other scores that are there. But there was one paper which was looking at methodologies in evidence synthesis that looked at reducing the harmonizing the sample bias that is there and recalculating the forest plot, and therefore showing the results in favor and for or against. Like those kind of manipulations are now being used, adopted. If you have come across those, because when I was reading it, I was bedazzled, saying that they are further manipulating the whole thing.
I can actually tell you. So there's a lot of, I'm going to say this, of AI-based platforms coming in to normalize clinical trials that are contextually quite different, where the statistical weight is not enough, the sample size is not enough, all the things you say. And that becomes beyond one single human capacity. So then they look at a lot of existing data, contextual relevance, and create a normal set. Now you can compare that and redo the problem is accessing the data. Because the best results come if you can access the raw data.
Right.
Not the manipulated data.
Not the summary.
If you get that, you can actually do a lot.
Just
Can
like
also
to
add to your point, like, you're talking about all this. So when you do a sample size calculation, just even I'm also involved in academic trials, you can't set up power of the study as 90%. You
Right.
can't even achieve it.
Right.
Suppose I got about 1,000 patients to be recruited and the newly detected, it's not doable. So you have to have a number which is really doable. So there is no point of you going to manipulate. When you write the protocol and you do the statistics, you see that this is what you want. And you can set the power as 80%, and then that's doable. If you go to US people, they say take it 90%. 90% is not doable in India. I told the doctor, I can't do it, make it 80%. No, you can, recruiting itself very difficult. So from the pathway, if you take it from the base, when you write the protocol itself, you should have all this set so that you will not have this kind of manipulation.
So let's start with the primary research to
From
be
the
more
base,
rigorous
from the base.
and selection of things as we go along with secondary.
Yes.
Yeah, just two things for the panel. One, 20 years ago, this city was the notorious capital of trials. I think all of us know that. And the unfortunate casualty of that was the HPV vaccine. It's something which this country would have started first amongst the entire Southeast Asian network, got pushed back. So how much do the politics of the day or the political governance have an impact on trial conduct in a country like India? That's one. Second thing, Madam, thank you so much for that patient retention modalities. But if you're looking at something like an educational intervention, compliance, then the Hawthorne effect immediately creeps in. That the minute you bring them together, then you're adding another dimension, which is negating what the trial was actually supposed to do. So how do we deal with those subjects? So these two questions. Anybody in the panel?
First question, Dr. Aparna.
The first question is how is the political climate in India?
That's the easiest one.
One word answer.
Of course, there has to be a political will in terms of whatever development, whatever the scientific achievement we are looking for. And I agree, set back everything for a few decades, but as a fallback of the whole HPV scene and everything, we do have more stringent laws and rules now. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I personally feel it's a good thing. Governance is actually increased a bit.
Yeah, I think it's a responsibility of everybody. I would not blame it on one person, one government. It's the responsibility of the physician, it's the responsibility of the patients, it's the responsibility of the relatives and the study coordinators as well as the policy makers. So it comes in multiple levels. So I just wanted to connect this with the question which the doctor asked about the manipulation of data. So randomized trials are considered the gold standard mainly because of its simplicity. The simplicity because you have two groups or three groups, you're comparing them and you're comparing all apples. It's made and there's bias and there is no bias in your selection or in the other person's selection. So when you meddle with the simplicity, that's when credibility gets affected and questions come in. And any complex, for example, Dr. Mehta morning, he presented a very complex thing in a very simplistic way. So nothing is so complex that you can't explain. That is the first thing. If you can't understand, don't believe it. So that's the second thing. So when during COVID, when results were coming in and there were variations, I think it was how it was handled to get the trust of the people most important. In India specifically, there is a hierarchy between patient and doctors. Patients consider, "Jo aap bolenge, wo hum karenge," right? They trust us. So that's the power which we have to use it for good. So that trust can be manipulated. So I believe the trust should be first set when the doctor accepts to do the trial, easy, comfortable to explain this to the patient. Next, is the patient in a position to understand? So in one role of what ethics and regulatory authorities can do is just judge by not the length of the participant information sheet, but how well it is understandable. I think that's the check they need to put and allow us to be flexible and modify the way we are asking the consent from the patients. And it's not about video recording the consent with a very lengthy 20-page. So I think we have gone a long way. We have changed. And as I said, Dr. Aparna said, 2012 to 17 was a black hole. We did have setbacks, but I think after 2017 things have improved. And beyond this, I think we as researchers and we as a community should be. There is a sense of heightened suspicion in the community, but they also need to understand: aren't trials happening in other countries, in developed countries, where there has to be sense of altruism among the communities also. So in some way, I feel in India we need to see what will I get from it. Maybe there is nothing you might get from it, but it is good to participate. So this thing is a social change. There has to be political change, social change, as well as change in the mindset of clinicians. It's not something which can come overnight. So it's not an answer for the question, sir, but
Final comment from before we go on to the
yes.
survey.
I actually wanted to bring up Dr. Murthy's question. So again, real world evidence, 2 examples. If you come back to COVID, how certain countries reacted, took a stand because of the political situation, America being the worst at that time. With the great fearless leader we had. We'd all been drinking Clorox. And then what happened in Brazil with Bolsonaro and what he did. And so there's political interference. But let me give you another example, more recent. Biogen's Alzheimer drug, which actually is an anti-amyloid monoclonal, did not have evidence. It did not have evidence, right? But the Alzheimer's patient groups were so powerful. I've never seen this happen. That what a scientific committee told the FDA to do is not approve the drug. They approved the drug, right? And that created a huge outcry. The cost of the drug is not trivial. It's $50,000 a shot. And major hospitals said, we are not going to use it. The evidence is not there. Now, in this case, regulators said yes, and hospitals said no. Now, that's where community comes in to do what is right. But my point is, we are not immune to these kinds of pressures. I'll end with a positive thing. Cystic fibrosis is a horrible disease. You can't just treat, you have to see the patient condition. Cystic Fibrosis Society of the United States at that stage said they had a molecule, you develop the protocols with the patients. It's one of the most successful launches of a conversion of a terminal disease to a chronic disease. But what happened is they took into consideration what it would mean to apply the therapy. The success and compliance is very high. So I think it cuts both ways, but we have to do what is practical for that drug, for that therapeutic approach. We tend to take a cookie cutter approach, which we can't take. And I think patient involvement at some stage, either they're going to oppose you or they're going to be with you, has to occur.
Of course, you can go to Nivedita's survey and then
we are running out of time,
Sure.
but
yeah, sure. Okay, let's go.
so you can go to the
As we speak.
and
As we
also
speak.
yeah. You have any comment?
No, I think I was thinking of talking to his point that we have been a casualty of bad systems or bad governance. I think we are good at not having good governance systems and not enforcing whatever we have. And then when something goes wrong, stifling everything and then trying to repair it over a very long period of time. So I think things have gotten better, but we can be in a better position. And I think the root cause is what you mentioned, the funding or the amount of money we spend on research in India. I think otherwise people like Aparna can't do anything, no matter how much you ask them.
We had wonderful point and we had a wonderful discussion. I think we will have a brief comment or a question.
I have a question. I don't know I don't want to take too much time, but I'm interested in talking about in silico trials and how they augment or affect the way you look at it. So if at some given point of time you can talk about it, would be nice.
Thanks for bringing it up. We had discussed about the questions earlier in a pre-conference and we thought that's a separate topic altogether. But we had a very nice discussion on impactful and efficient clinical research. Huge insights from all the experts here. In terms of impact, one thing I just wanted to bring out as a lacuna is a lot of times the real world data is quite different from an RCT data. And the kind of patients which are included or excluded in RCT excludes most of the patients in the real world. It's a fashion to have 5 or 6 inclusion and 50 exclusion criteria. So the longer the exclusion is like an answer sheet you want to fill up. That should not be the point. Because if you are excluding most of the patients in the real world from, you can't be cherry picking and say I've been in this 10%, so 90% who won't benefit will be financing it, and the pharma company, whoever it is, makes all that. So we should be very careful about when we design an RCT and how closely it should match the RCT. So that's the final comments from my side. Dr. Nivedita, are you ready with your?
Yes, we are ready. So the question is about how do you increase clinical trial efficiency? I see some themes coming in. A few more seconds I would give for you to enter this. I think one common thing which is coming here is proper planning. I wanted to touch upon this, but it's coming from you that if you are able to do it something well, then it's automatically efficient. So research capacity strengthening among all of us for every role which we do is very important. So I might move to the next question. What would you do to increase impact of clinical trials? Whatever role you are in, what would you like to do? So this is the last question. Probably as they're summarizing, you can summarize the.
So I think this is the last slide.
Yes, this is the last.
So I think we had a very nice session, and I hope that one of the things which did bother me as well, which Dr. Nivedita said bothered her, as soon as we asked for one word to describe clinical trials, and risk came up at the beginning, and she had to talk about it at the end. I hope you understand that there are systems in place. Dr. Murthy also raised that question, and in general, what Dr. Aparna has said, that we have more governance now, maybe much more than in other countries. So hopefully, it's not as risky, but we should contribute to and our data. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, and let's just think of clinical trials as benefit, not risk.
If we don't participate, we are at risk because we are using something which has not come from our
The
data.
word that should come to your mind when you hear of clinical trials is benefit, beneficence, do good.
Thank you all so much.
So I'll stop sharing.
So now you want to. India's most. No.
Dr. Pungotai.